Spike, we spoke about some of the characters. I mean, your history is very long with the club and the Hobart race and sailing generally. Tell us about the Mickleboroughs and the Rubbers and the Thunders and these sort of blokes. I mean, you must have had wonderful times.
Well, I do. They're I don't know. They're all publishable. Mickleborough was a great fella. Don and I always got on. I don't think I ever did a Hobart with him. No, I didn't. That's correct. But I did a Montague Island race, and it was very up and down in the way of wind and so forth. And as I recall, the Montague Island races then were done with the Monday being a holiday, correct? And Don had said, can you get another fella to come along? And I said, yes, I think so. And there was a young stoker, I think he was, called Stan. I remember his name quite clearly. And I said, Stan, would you like to do an ocean race? He went, oh, I'd love to. Absolutely wrapped in it. So away we went, and of course, came Monday, and Stan only had leave until Monday night or Tuesday morning, and we were still just at that moment, at that time, down off Montague and rounding Montague. And Don and I talked about it, and he said, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, he's going to get charged for being absent without leave if we don't do something. And he said, well, I don't think we're going to win this race, but if we could go into Tuesday, we even could go into Wednesday. So we unfortunately had to retire, and I always thought what a gracious thing that was on the part of Don Mickleborough to say, yeah, we won't get this fella into trouble, we'll go back and drop him off.
Terrific. Now, another character was Vic Meyer.
Vic,
now
Uncle Victor.
You had a lot to do with Vic. Tell us about
Victor.
Vic.
I got on awfully well with Uncle Victor, and even after he retired from the ocean racing and ocean cruising, and he bought a house up in behind Maroochydore Way. I always used to call in and see him whenever I was there, and even in those days, in that later part of life, he had an immaculate workshop out in the back, a shed which had everything in it. And no, Vic was I suppose, he was determined to build a boat and do some good with it, and he did. There's no question about it. I know a lot of people thought he was pretty rough and a little abrasive. I think it was the way you treated him, and he would treat you.
Tell us about your Hobart race on Solent.
Oh yeah, the Hobart race on Solent.
You missed Tasman, didn't you? Or
yeah, well, the first night was nor'easter, pretty much, run-of-the-mill stuff. And that night, of course, we got our southerly change, bang, and got all the gear off in a hell of a hurry and settled down on the nose across Bass Strait. I would like to say here that Alan Payne design was one of the nicest boats to sail I have ever sailed. Beautifully balanced. She went to windward like a dream. Just a little couple of turns of the spokes of the wheel and just a dream. Just a lovely boat. Then I think we were. I just can't recall exact details, but we may have had a northerly or an easterly, a westerly at least, off the Tasmanian coast, and we didn't get any sights. Now, I wasn't the navigator at this particular time, and I won't mention the name of the fellow that was, but we were roughly where we thought Tasman Light was, and there was no Tasman Light. So Uncle Victor said, Spike, you're a navigator, aren't you? I said, yes, I have presumptions of being so. And he said, well, can you take a side? And I said, oh yeah, I can take a side. He said, well, would you do it? And I said, yeah, okay. So I whipped out a quick sight, and I only had one position line, which put us well offshore. And I said, well, Vic, I don't know. This is the position line here. We're heading for Macquarie Island as far as I can see. And he said, well, what do you recommend? And I said, I reckon from where I think we are, we should start steering about west, up to 290 in fact.
North of west.
North of west.
Right.
Yeah.
To get back into Storm Bay.
Definitely, get into Storm Bay.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, for some, I don't know, God must, the navigator, the God of navigators must have been on my side. And what appeared on the starboard bow was Tasman Light. So we won. We got our first, we got line honours, and I think Vic thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. I said, well, it was just a bit of luck, mate. Bit of luck.
Oh, I don't know about that, yeah. But Solo, I mean,
Solo,
in her day, I mean, as you said, a terrific boat.
Well, Solo is the only ocean racer I've ever sailed in where I got roast leg of lamb and 2 veg. She had a beautiful galley, and on that particular trip, and all the other ones that I did pre-season, during the season, pre that Hobart, the cook, I think, was a fellow called Tony Ball, and he was a short little bloke, and he always had a fund of stories. He never stopped. So I can't relate the stories because I can't remember them, but in any case they wouldn't be appropriate. But he would. Things got a bit warm down below when we were doing it, as you know. Sometimes it got damn cold, sometimes it got very warm, and he would race around this thing. And the only thing I always used to say to him was, the only thing you're missing is a tail, otherwise you're a damn monkey. And he would produce this beautiful food.
Yeah, but Vic always had good crews with his boats. They were all well crewed.
Yes. I was thinking of Don Coolum. Don Coolum.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of some of the others, particularly Don and Tony Ball. I remember clearly, right. And there were others, and I just can't put a name to them at the moment, Peter. It's a long time ago. Anyway.
And then we move forward slightly, and another great character, Gordon Ingay.
Oh, Wingnut. Yeah, Gordon.
Korea.
Yeah. I teamed up with Gordon when he had Caprice, and sailed with him and with Salfield, his what's his name, brother, Sally's brother.
Yes.
Yeah, and Caprice was a lovely boat. Yeah. At the time that the Admirals Cup came up, I was still sailing with Wingy, and then I was posted to England on that particular one that I mentioned before, to Australia House, and Wingy wrote to me and said, look, I need a navigator for the trials and so forth, and you're away. Do you mind if I have Bill Feskin? I wrote back and said, no, what a great choice as far as I was concerned. He said, the Halversons would like to take you over. So I moved from Caprice then to sail with the Halversons. In the UK, I was in a position to get the charts. And I managed to get a discount, actually. Not much of a discount, but I did some Arab trading. And sent them back so that they had the Solent charts and the channel charts. Then, of course, the trials were held and the 3 boats were chosen. I did do one Hobart race with Wiggy, and of course we were doing quite well, but once again the fickle Storm Bay and
the river.
I think Wingy always felt that it might be better to stop at Tasman Light on that occasion. He wanted, and Freddie Thomas was there, the one who used to be with Shields, Graham
Yes,
Shields
yes.
in Elsbar.
Yes.
Young Salfield, and I just can't think of there was someone else quite. However, memory, you know, it's gone.
And we'll just talk about the 65 Admirals Cup. Did you sail with the Halversons on Freya?
Yes, I sailed with the Halversons. What was agreed with Trigg and Magnus was that I would co-navigate with Stan, because prior to the Admirals Cup, I had been sailing with Ren Clark in Quiver 4,
Right, yes.
and Peter Nicholson. And also prior to that, I'd had a lot of time with RDF on other boats, because I used to sail as well with Geoffrey Pattinson.
Now, so if I could interrupt there, Spike, you and I know what RDF means, but a lot of people who may be tuning in here would not have a clue what RDF is.
There are non-directional beacons on
Yes.
all the major points along the channel.
Yes. So radio direction finding, basically.
Yes,
Homing
so
on a Morse code
so you could get a bearing on each of these stations, such as Start Point, the Lizard, Casquettes. They all gave their distinctive call sign, whatever it was.
Morse code.
code.
Yeah.
And you had a compass and a ferro bar across the instrument, and you got a null.
Yes.
And you could take that as a bearing.
Yes.
You had to allow certain adjustments for convergence and things, but we won't go into that. That's all to Teco. But that was my main role, to do that, and it was, if you used it properly in a fog, you could really come to the fairway buoy of. I remember once when I was learning about this, being in a boat, which we were in fog in the channel, and the navigator brought us right to the pool buoy, and right on the spot, and you know, I suppose.
I've got a similar story. In '73, I was in England racing with Apollo.
Yeah.
And Stan Darling, who we're talking about, was the navigator.
Yeah.
And I was a young Turk then, and you know, Stan was there with his headphones, and we're going across the Irish Sea to Fastnet in heavy fog. And as you know, in fog, you really don't know how far you can see, because you don't know whether you can see 100 metres or 200 or 10 metres. And we were just running, soft running, probably 10, 15 knots of wind, and Stan was down there with his headphones on, and he was homing in on various beacons on the Irish coast, I guess. And he said, "You better start getting the Genoa up," you know. And we sort of said, "Well, why?" He said, "Well, Fastnet Rock is going to appear in, 10 minutes." And within 10 minutes and 15 seconds, there was Fastnet. We were looking at it, 50 metres away. It was extraordinary.
Yeah.
And those things will never, you'll always remember those sort of things. But I mean, in '65, I mean, you had yourself and Stan and Bill Fest, so we had a pretty good navigational team in that Admirals Cup series.
Yeah. I think where we went wrong, there were two places where we went wrong, because we didn't know the Solent well enough. And that's another story which I think about sometimes. The other thing is that when we got to the Rock and went round the Rock, there's no question about it, we should have gone west. Instead of coming, there was a big discussion in the boat as to whether we should take a tack and go west into the where the fronts were coming from, or stay on the best tack, on the best leg. And well, the decision was made to stay on the so-called winning leg at that stage with the current wind, because then it came back right round the other way, and we got done.
But is that? Did you do any other sailing with the Halversons, or was that?
Oh yes, I had been sailing with them here, but not a great deal. No, not a great deal.
So
the weekend that Ron Robertson was lost off Kurrawa,
yes,
I was sailing with them, for example.
Right.
And we went out the following day and searched. I think it was a Monday to see if we could find any sign of him, but no.
No, sad time. So your career is long and illustrious. Talk about some
about illustrious.
Well, don't understand yourself. But let's talk about some of the weather. I mean, obviously you saw bad weather in your naval career, but what about sailing career? What bad storms? Or anything sticks out that extreme weather that you might have gone through?
Well, I think there was some, but you just got to take it as it comes, don't you? I don't know that I could dramatise that.
Right.
No, I don't really. I've always thought, well, you're out there, you're on your own in those days, especially.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't terribly much in the way of search and rescue.
Yeah.
Any helicopters around, and you had to just got to get on with it. And the boats were pretty solid, as you know, because under the RORC rule in those days, the scantlings, you got such a wonderful benefit if you had heavy scantlings. And no, I don't think I can dramatise that, Peter. Except it was bloody wet.
But what about the boats of yesteryear and the boats of today? I mean, how do you see the ocean racing boats of today?
I'm quite happy. I like the ocean racing boats of today, except I don't like the swing keel dogs. Yeah. I don't think that ever relates to safety in my book, but they get through. They've perfected it. I still belong to the RRC, and I read the Seahorse. Some of it's terribly technical to me now, but I look at read particularly the sections that deal with failures, and there seem to be so many material failures that happen in boats. They just they can't calculate the enormous pressures that driving a boat at 20 knots plus puts on a hull, on a shell, or on the skin of the boat. And so far we haven't had we've had some nasty accidents, but we haven't had a real tragedy, as I recall. I don't think I ever experienced anything like the Hobart race where Winston went. Yeah. I think I was lucky to avoid that sort of situation.
Yes, yeah.
And I often wonder how the boats of the day would have coped, when I'm thinking boats of the day, the 50s, in those situations.
And what are you doing sailing-wise these days? You still got a little folk boat? Or?
Yes, I've still got my folk boat.
Yeah.
I don't use it all that much, but I try. And when I can get someone to come out with me, some young enthusiast who's stupid enough to come out and be bored.
Well, in finishing, Tony Cable, who's well known to you and to this club and to the sailing people in general, he said to ask you this question. It's from Tony Cable. He said, there's a saying that goes around, he said, the three most useless things on a yacht are a wheelbarrow, an umbrella, and a serving naval officer.
That's
Would
right.
you like to comment on that?
Well, I can't say except that I think he's probably quite right. except that I would, what was the first one?
A wheelbarrow.
A wheelbarrow. No, I think no, I can't say that any of those are much use.
Well, Spike, it's been a great pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your sailing career, and it's been wonderful.
Not that much left of it, I don't think, Peter. But I hope I've just given some ideas of the main thing that I think about my time in those early days was the camaraderie. A fleet of 17 boats, something like that, maybe 20, and you knew, because you'd been sailing in pre-Hobart in the season, you just about knew everyone, not everyone, but so many of the people, and you could talk to them, and the get together in Hobart. I know the quite little drink came a little later on, but even in those days it was just wonderful, and I have memories of those, and those days mainly on that basis, that I knew so many excellent friendly people.
And friends for life, really.
Yeah, well, Mickleborough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. Well, thank you, Spike. It's been fantastic.
Thank you.